Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Eruvin Daf Samach Gimel is primarily a mix of Agada and Halacha concerning the concept of a Talmud, a student saying Halacha in front of his Rebbe, that is paskening a Halacha, giving Halachic advice in the presence or in the proximity to his Rebbe. The Gemara will have a number of statements of Rava on the subject, which are halachic. Then the Gemara will have stories about each one and whether each one is accepted halacha. Near the end of the daf, the Gemara switches over to the concept of impeding people's reproductive efforts, per revu, the punishment that Yehoshua received while he was not blessed with children. And then the very end of the daf goes back to the halachos of shitufei mavais, when there is a goy in the mavai. So the Gemara begins and says, Rav Amnuna Paskin the halacha in a town called Charsa de Argaz. Argaz was the person who built it, so the town was called Charsa de Argaz. But this halacha that he said was in the days when his Rebbe Rav Chizda was alive. So you see, even though his Rebbe Rav Chizda was alive, because he was not present in the town, therefore was not considered to be paskin the halacha in front of his Rebbe. Now Ravina was he allowed himself to paskin on a shchita knife. Now the halacha is that a sheikhet is supposed to show his knife to the chacham of the city. That is an honor that's given to the chacham of the city. It's more than just getting a halacha. It's even if he knows that the knife is good, it's still considered to be an honorary thing to show it to the chacham of the city, and the chacham of the city receives the special honor. So Ravina accepted that honor in Bavel, in a town in Bavel, which is a region, not just a town, even though Rav Ashi, who was a Talmud, who was a Rebbe of Ravina, was also a Chaver, but was also a Rebbe of Ravina. Rav Ashi was in Bavel itself. Rav Ashi was in Machasia. Ravina was not in the same city, but he was in Bavel, and he still looked at the knife. And Rav Ashi asked Ravina, why did you do that? Don't you realize that I am your Rebbe, and you should not be looking at a knife, a shchita knife, in my present? So he said, what's the problem? You were off in Machasia, and Rav Amnuna we see paskin halacha and Charsa de Argaz, even though Rav Chizda was alive. So he said, what do you mean? My version of that story is that he did not paskin the halacha. So he said, the truth is that there are two versions of the story. He did paskin and he didn't paskin, and the correct version is as follows. In the days of Rav Huna, who was his Rebbe, then he did not paskin because Rav Huna was really his Rebbe. But in the days of, that was Rav Huna. In the days of Rav Chizda, who was a Talmud, Rav Hamnuna was a Talmud Chaver, meaning he was an equal, but he had learned certain things from Rav Chizda. There he did paskin because it was a different city. And you, Rav Ashi, I'm a Talmud Chaver of you. I'm somewhat of an equal, but I have learned things from you, and therefore I feel free to paskin on the knife and look at the knife in the same region as you, as long as it's not the same city. Okay, now Rava says the halacha, the first of a few halachas about paskening a question in the presence of one's Rebbe. Rava says that Sorvim Rabbanan, somebody who's a Rav, is allowed to look at his own shchita knife. He doesn't have to bring it to the chacham of the city. Now the Gemara brings that Ravina went up to Mechuzah and he stayed in somebody's inn, and the host, the innkeeper, wanted to show him his knife so that he should be able to slaughter meat and serve him. So he said, go show it to Rava. Rava was the head of the town of Mechuzah. So he said, don't you hold the Rava's halacha? Rava said that if you're a Rav, if you're a Tzuvah Mirabanan, you're allowed to paskin your own knives. So here, this meat is for you. I'm going to shach it and serve it to you. He said, it doesn't count as if you're serving it for me because you're selling it to me. You're the innkeeper. I'm going to be paying you for it. Therefore, I could just easily buy somewhere else. It doesn't count like you're doing it for me. You're doing it for yourself, and I'm going to buy it from you. Therefore, I can't paskin it for you. Okay, now the Gemara gives a siman for the next Gemara. And here we have Rabbi Elazar from Hagrunya, and Rav Acha bar Tachlifa went up to stay in the house of Rav Acha bar Ravika. And the Rav of the region was Rav Acha bar Yaakov. We have three Achas here. The Rav is Rav Acha bar Yaakov, the visitors are Rabbi Elazar from Hagrunya and Rav Acha bar Tachlifa, and the host is Rav Acha bar Ravika. So Rav Acha bar Ravika wanted to serve them Igla Tilsa. Igla Tilsa is considered to be the highest level meat. It means the third cow. Rashi has two pshatim. Either it means that it's a third grown, or it means that it is the third cow born to its mother. Anyway, but he had to have his knife shown, so he brought his knife and he was showing it to Rav Acha bar Tachlifa. He was showing it to them, and Rav Acha bar Tachlifa said, don't you think you should be showing this to the Rav of the town, who's Rav Acha bar Yaakov? And he called him Saba, the old man. You should show it to the old man. So Rav Elazar Me'agunya said, you don't have to. Rav said that the halach is that a Talmud Chacham is allowed to paskin on his own meat, on his own knife for his own meat. The Gemara says that even though Rava did say that halacha, still Rav Elazar Me'agunya was punished min hashamayim. Something bad happened to him because he said that. So the Gemara asks, well, why? He's correct. Rava did say that. Talmidei Chacham are allowed to paskin on their own knives. They don't have to show it to the Rav of the town. The Gemara says, well, this was different either because they already started suggesting that they should go show it to Rav Acha bar Yaakov, and therefore to say no, do not, that's considered to be a chutzpah already. Rava didn't say that. Rava just said you don't have to go show him, but if somebody says show him, to say no is worse. Or possibly Rav Acha bar Yaakov was on a much higher level. He was significantly older and significantly more of a chacham than most people. Therefore, he was set apart. Okay, now Rava says another halacha. Rava says that a Talmud is allowed to paskin halacha in front of his Rebbe if it's afrushi me'isur. If it's to stop somebody who's about to do an isur, is about to do an aver or something forbidden, he's allowed to shout and stop him. He doesn't have to first let the Rebbe speak. He's allowed to jump up and say in front of the Rebbe. And there's another story here about Ravina and Rav Ashi. Ravina was sitting right in front of Rav Ashi, and he saw somebody who was tying the donkey to a tree. Now it's also d'Rabbanan to tie anything to a tree or to use a tree in any way on Shabbos. So he shouted at him, and the guy didn't listen. So he said, "You're going to be in chayrim." So then afterwards he asked Rav Ashi, did I do correct or not? Was it a chutzpah that I did this in front of you or not? And Rav Ashi said to him, Ein chachma, ein tuna, ein eitza leneged Hashem. There are no taking advice or waiting for suggestions or waiting for wisdom in front of Hashem. You have to stop an avera from happening, and therefore you have to act right away, and you did the correct thing. Anytime there's a situation of a potential chal Hashem happening, you don't give kavod to anybody, you just act. Okay, now Rava continues with another halacha. Rava says as follows: there's a difference between saying a halacha in front of your Rebbe if it's right in front of him or if it's just in the region. If it's right in front of him and somebody passing his halacha in front of his Rebbe, it not only is it forbidden, he also gets punished with the death penalty because he is tripping up the underpinnings of the Mesorah. All of Klal Yisrael's knowledge and halacha comes from the train of transmission from generation to generation. If you mess that up, you are putting the entire future of the Jewish people at risk. Now, if it's close to the Rebbe and not actually in front of him, then it's forbidden if it's in the same region, but there is no death penalty based on that. So now the Gemara says, is that really true? Is it really true that if it's not directly in front of him, there is no death penalty based on that? The Gemara quotes a lengthy brisa. Brisa quotes Rabbi Eliezer, who says that the children of Aaron, Nadab and Avihu, they brought a carbon in the Mishkan that they weren't supposed to, and they were both killed on the spot. What was their Aveira? So Rabbi Eliezer says in this brisa, the Aveira was that they passed on the halacha in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. They said a drasha. It says, they put fire on the Mizbech. They said, even though fire comes down from Shemayim to eat the karbanos, or to consume the karbanos, but still the kohen should be bringing his own fire. Moshe didn't tell them that, and they didn't ask that. That means they passed on the halacha without asking Moshe. That's considered to be Mar Halacha B'fnei Rabbi. It was right in front of Moshe, and that was that incurred the death penalty for them on the spot. Now Rabbi Eliezer had a Talmud who passed on the halacha in front of him, and Rabbi Eliezer said to his wife, whose name was Ima Shalom, he said, I would be surprised if this man lives out the year, and he did not live out the year. So his wife said, oh, you're a Navi? He said, no, I'm not a Navi, I'm not a Ben Navi. But I know, I have a Kabbalah, anybody who passes halacha in front of his Rebbe is Chayav Misa on the spot. Now, on that story, Rabbi Bar B'chananah said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan that Talmud's name was Yehuda Bar Gurya, and he was 3 parsois away. So you see, even though he was 3 parsois away, it was not in front of him, he still got the death penalty. So how could Rava say that if it was not directly in front of him, there is no death penalty? The Gemara says, no, he wasn't in front of him. The Gemara says, what do you mean? But Rabbi Bar B'chananah quoted Rabbi Yechanan, who said, his name was Yehuda Bar Gurya, and he was 3 parsois away. So what does 3 parsois away mean? If 3 parsois away means that he was 3 parsois away from a town, but he was together with his Rebbe, what's the point in saying that? So the Gemara says there is a point in saying it. What do you think the point was in saying his name and his father's name? The point is to show that this is not Stama Maisa. This is not a made-up story. There's details here. This actually happened. That's why we wanted to say that, and that's why he pointed out the man's name, and that's why he said he was 3 parsois away from the town where they were. But he was still directly in front of his exact Rebbe. Okay, the Gemara continues, and it quotes Rav Chia Bar Abba in the name of Rav Yechanan. It says, anybody who passes his halacha in front of his Rebbe, he should be bitten by a snake, like it says in Iyo Vayan Eliu ben Barachel, Habuz Vayemer Tza'ir Ani Liyamim Alkein Zochalti. He said, I'm too young, I'm young in front of you, that's why I didn't want to pass halacha in front of you. He used the word Zachalti, which is similar to a word in Parashas Hazinu, Chama Zeichle Afar, which refers to the bite of snakes. So somebody who passes halacha gets bitten by snakes. And Zeiri says the name of Rabbi Chanina, he's called a sinner, like it says in Tehillim, David HaMelech says, Believe Tzofanti and Rosecha, in my heart I kept your words, meaning I didn't say a halacha, in order that I shouldn't be sinning to you. I didn't pass on halacha in front of my Rebbe, so I shouldn't be doing an aveira. Rav Nuna says a contradiction. We have this pasuk, which clearly says that David did not say psak, On the other hand, we have a different one that says, Bisarti tzedek b'kol rav. I said the correct mitzvahs, I said halachos, in front of a giant congregation. So which is it? Did David HaMelech say psak or not? The Gemara says not a kasha. One was while his Rebbe was alive, one was after his Rebbe had died. Which Rebbe? It's referring to the Rebbe called Ir HaYe'iri, who's quoted in Shmuel Beis. He's referred to as a kohen l'David. He was a kohen to David. Rashi says kohen l'David means that he was David's Rebbe. So the Gemara also here is interested in this expression kohen l'David. The Gemara says what happened was actually that David HaMelech gave all his matnas kahuna to Ir HaYe'iri, and right after it says that, there was a famine, there was a plague that happened then. There was a magefa, there was a rav, there was a hunger. So you see from here that somebody who gives all his matnas kahuna to one kohen causes a hunger. And that was because he gave everything to Ir HaYe'iri. Okay, now the Gemara continues. The Gemara says, Rebbe Elazar says actually somebody who passes halacha in front of his Rebbe loses his position of greatness. Like you saw, Elazar HaKohen set up psak to the people who came back from fighting the war against Midian. He said to them how to do a hilchos gil, how to kasher the kalim, and he actually quoted Moshe. He said, kasher tiva Hashem es Moshe. Even though he went and he quoted Moshe, still he received the punishment. What was the punishment? He was the one who was wearing the Urim Tumim. He was supposed to advise Yehoshua as to what the Urim Tumim is directing him, but you see, you never find that Yeshua ever asked him anything because he lost that privilege of being able to paskin. Yeshua never needed him, and therefore he was sent down a step because he gave the halachos of kashering kalim in front of Moshe Rabbeinu, even though he actually said that I'm saying over what Moshe said. Now, on a similar note, the Gemara says that somebody who even says one word of psak halacha in front of his Rebbe will receive a terrible punishment. He will go to the depths of the earth, meaning he's going to pass away without children. Where do you see that? Yeshua ben Nun once said one word in front of Moshe Rabbeinu, and Yeshua ben Nun died without children. What was the word? When Eldad and Medad said Nevuah, Yeshua went running to Moshe and he said, Adoni Moshe, kala aim, lock him up. So he's telling Moshe what the halacha should be, and he was wrong. And there was just one word, kala aim. And still in Divrei Hayamim it says, Nun benai Yeshua benai, that Nun had a son Yeshua, and that was the end of that line. Yeshua had no children of his own. So Gemara says this is actually in contradiction to what Rav Abba Bar Papa says. Because he says Yeshua got a punishment for a different reason, and here we switched gears to talk about Pru Revu, the mitzvah of reproduction, reproducing, making children. Because Yeshua stopped Klal Yisrael from doing Pru Revu. How did that happen? What was that all about? When they were setting up war against Yerichai, so they should have stopped the war at night. They should have stopped the siege at night. There was no reason for a siege at night. You don't fight wars at night. You have to be able to see what you're doing. But he didn't. He kept the siege going at night. Now, that caused two problems. First, it caused three issues. First of all, they couldn't bring the Talmud Shel Ben Harabayim. Second of all, they couldn't learn the Torah. And the third thing was that it stops Pru Revu. Why does it stop Pru Revu? Because during war times, the Aron is out of its place in the Mishkan. And the halacha is that nobody's allowed to be Isaac in Pru Revu as long as the Aron is out of the Mishkan. Now, how do we know these things? So Gemara says as follows, that Psukim tell us that a malach came and appeared to Yeshua with his sword drawn, and Yeshua said, who are you? You friend or foe? He said, I'm a malach Hashem. He said, what's the problem? Why are you here with your sword drawn? He said, there's two things wrong. Number one is you didn't bring the carbon of the Talmud, and number two, you didn't learn the Torah. Didn't mention the third one. And Yeshua said, okay, so which one are you here to tell us about? He said, I'm here for the last one. And Yeshua right there was makabel upon himself the next time, by the next war, which was when they went to Ai, that they were going to learn Torah, and it says, Yeshua says, Vayelech Yeshua balayla hu b'soicha emek. Yeshua went into the valley. The Gemara says, Drasha vayolen b'soicha amka shel Torah. He went into the deep halachos of Torah then during that war. But you do see that the Malach was telling him that you should not have kept the siege going. And the fact that we kept the siege going, we know that there was no Pru Revu going on, because we separately are aware of the halacha that as long as the Aron is not in its place, there cannot be any reproduction. Okay. Now, Gemara continues and says we learned some other things from this incident. Shmuel Bar Inya says in the name of Rav, we see that Talmud Torah is greater than bringing the carbon of Talmud, because the Malach who came was coming to tell them about the fact that they were disrupting learning Torah, and he was not as concerned about the fact that they had not brought the carbon Talmud Shel Ben Harabayim. Okay, now on the subject of impeding Pru Revu, the Gemara quotes Rav Bruna. The name of Rav says anybody who sleeps in a room where a man and his wife are sleeping, by his presence there, he's preventing them from being Isaac in Pru Revu, and therefore we apply the pasuk to him. You chase the wives of my people away from their house of pleasure. Rav Yosef says this applies even if the woman is a nida and they cannot actually do anything. The fact that he is there causes interruptions in the entire sugya for them, and it is difficult for them. Rava says no, and the opposite is true. If she's a nida, then he should be blessed because he is helping to keep them from doing an avera by causing embarrassment. Rava says that's not true. They never had a problem before. They didn't need anybody to watch them. We say suga b'Shoshana. Klal Yisrael knows how to keep the halachos of nida without anybody looking over their shoulders, and therefore we argue on that. Okay, that concludes the Agada to the Gemara. Now it goes back to the halachos of making Eruvin Daf. As we had seen, if there's a idol worshiper living together with people in a chatzar or in an erev chatzeres, you cannot make in a chatzar or in a mavoi, you cannot make a erev chatzeres or a shitufei mavois with a guy there. So what you have to do is rent rights to use his property. That's the only solution. You can't do bitul rishus. You can't make an erev. So the Gemara says that there was an incident that happened with a guy by the name of Lachman bar Ristok. Mepharshim say that was his name. Was not his father's name. It's not Lachman was his name and Ristok was his father's name. His full name was Lachman bar Ristok. And there's a bunch of Jews who lived in a mavoi. They lived in a chutzar, and in that same chutzar was another chutzar, and in there was Nachman bar Ristak. So they shared a mavoi. They wanted to make a shetufei mavois, and they needed to rent rishos from him, and he did not want to. He said, "Nope, not allowing it." So they came running to Abaye and said, "What should we do?" So Abaye said, "Here's the solution. All the Jews who live in this mavoi should all be mevatel rishos. They should give over their rights in the mavoi to one Jew who lives there. That way, there's really only one Jew, halachically, who lives in the mavoi. And we know the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov is that you need to have at least two Jews for the idol worshiper living there to create a problem. As long as you have only one Jew, it's not a problem. Here you have only one because everybody just gave over their rishos to him." So the Gemara says that sounds like a good solution. But they asked, how could you do that? The whole reason that we saw before, the whole reason that Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says it's only a problem if you have multiple Jews is that it's very uncommon for one Jew to live together in a chutzar with a goy. Here you have many Jews living there. The only reason is you played a shtick and made it seem as if there's only one. But you can't call this an uncommon scenario. So Abai says, yes, it is uncommon, because how common is it for everybody to be mevatel their rishos to one person that he is the only one who has permission to use the chutzar and the mavai? So it's very uncommon, and therefore there is no gzeir derabanan, and therefore you're allowed to do this solution. As we shall see, the Gemara will not be necessarily pleased with the Abai solution, and that will take us further on Daf Samach.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.